Welcome to the Reprofiles, where infertility meets injustice and nothing is off limits.
We're two nurses. We're certified reproductive health advocates, and we're here to tell you everything they didn't.
From the broken systems to the heartbreak left behind, we're here to connect the facts, the policies, and the pain.
Because silence isn't safety, and we're done being quiet.
This is the Reprofiles.
Infertility, injustice, and all things nobody warned you about.
Good day, good day. Welcome back to the Reprofiles, where we talk about infertility, injustice, and all the things nobody warned you about. I'm Elizabeth, one of the hosts.
And I'm your other host, Anne-Marie. Today's episode is one that many of you have asked for because holidays are coming, and with them comes family gatherings, traditions, expectations, and sometimes comments that feel like emotional shrapnel.
That gave me the chills because that's really well said. Because it really is. If you're walking into this season while navigating infertility, miscarriage, IVF cycles, infant loss, we are here to tell you that you are not alone and that you're not imagining the weight of it all. You're not.
No, absolutely not. This episode is for you, your partner, anyone who loves someone going through this. I would say share this with your family or friends that you're going to be around during the holidays, because a lot of times they say things that just hit you really hard and they don't even realize it. They don't understand. And so we're going to try to prepare you emotionally how to respond to these types of questions, like when are you going to have a baby, and how to give yourself permission to protect your heart.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, you know, we'll start with the obvious. I think I was talking about this with somebody earlier today, this idea that the holidays are culturally built around children and milestones and ritual, right? You can't walk into any store at this time of year without practically getting slapped in the face by, big displays of, family matching pajamas, right? And these picture perfect family ads. And I think that adds a pressure. So I think we have to say that the holidays can be really hard for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
not just those
Yeah.
going through infertility. So I think even if you're one of our dear listeners and you are willing to stick with us, I think that there is something to be learned, because in this case it's infertility, but I think that there's a lot of different reasons for a lot of folks that make the holidays hard. And so just getting out there, that part of that is the expectations that are set around the holidays.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it right. I mean, you have these pictures that are coming out, pajamas, toys, all these things that involve children, getting the families together. And for people that are facing infertility, these images, they tap right into your grief. And it's not like you're grieving an event. You're actually grieving an entire imagined future, because for many people, they never envisioned that they would ever be here. As we said before, no one wants to walk into a fertility clinic. They don't want to be there. And this is kind of just adding on to that, like, I'm doing this now kind of thing. And they feel very isolated during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, clinically, we know this to be real as well. ASRM consistently affirms that infertility is a disease of the reproductive system, but that also the emotional burden of that disease is significant. I think we've mentioned this also before, that peer-reviewed studies actually show that infertility grief is comparable to cancer level stress. So the type of thoughts, emotions, feelings that patients undergoing cancer treatment might feel: grief, loss, anger, denial, bargaining, all the things. Infertility has a very comparable level of stress to that.
Yeah. I mean, infertility is year round, but when it comes to the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, these are all like major holidays that, it really puts a spotlight on it, because suddenly you're around all these relatives you haven't seen in a year or maybe a few years. Coworkers, we're all doing type of Thanksgiving celebrations at work. And then they there's always people that, just feel that need to ask you about your reproductive plans.
It's funny, right? Because I suppose I mean, there was a time it wasn't that the infertility piece was it was ignored, it was swept under the rug, right, entirely. But yes, especially as infertility rates rise, right? We've talked about the rapid increase in infertility in Americans specifically. When you and I started in the field, we looked at around 1 in 8 in terms of prevalence of infertility, and now it's down to like 1 in 6, 1 in 5. So you can imagine all the more that in a holiday type environment where, like you said, you've got your distant Aunt Karen who's there and she cannot help but ask you, when you're going to have a baby, or probably worse, the ones who think that they're being helpful, but say really stupid things like, just relax, it's going to happen for you. And it's like, yes, Karen, as if cortisol levels can just magically open a blocked fallopian tube. Thank you for such sage advice.
I like how
You
you
like how my
used
aunt's
Aunt
name is
Karen.
Karen?
I love how you used Aunt Karen. That
I know, and I don't have an Aunt Karen, but I just imagine that, that if in these situations, that it feels like a very Karen thing to do, especially because 30 years ago, we didn't have folks like you and I out there trying to normalize these types of things, but now we do. Now there's plenty of education out there that's made people aware that infertility is on the rise, and questions like, when are you going to have a baby, are really hurtful, and they just don't land. They don't ever land the way you think they will. So, like at the end of the day, my advice is just don't. But yeah, like just don't say it. If you're not 1,001% sure, just don't say it, because the hurt that can be inflicted, whether or not intentional, can be really deep and really long lasting.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel like this particular episode is very important for people to share with friends and families, because sometimes they don't want to say it. They don't want to say to people, please don't talk about this. Please don't talk
Yeah.
about this. It's hard to even say that. So we're going to do it for you. And
Yep.
we're going to tell your friends and family, just don't do it. Don't
Yeah. Just
ask that question. Don't bring it up.
yeah.
It's not none your business, first off.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
get out of the bedroom, get out of my bedroom kind of thing, but none your business. But the other thing, not just infertility, it also is going to hit people really hard if they've experienced a miscarriage, particularly around this time of year. So that date of a miscarriage or loss becomes tethered to the holiday, and the grief just resurfaces annually. And I'll talk from experience in that I remember when I had a miscarriage, and that was in January, and I'll always remember, in January, I had this loss, and it just comes back. It doesn't creep up every single year, but it does every once in a while, but I can't imagine, like, if it was around a holiday, that's something that's gonna be in your mind.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And and again, trying to make this as broad as we can, I think that translates out to a lot of the different things that folks might grieve around the holidays, and that is dates. Like I can never help myself but think, oh, this is the X number of Christmas without my mom. This is the like, so I think the holidays are really, like you said, there's like a tethering of emotions to that, because I think when we do think about the holidays, many of us harken back to, you know, olden days, so to speak, or, our past, our childhoods, and then usually that comes up. But, the question that nobody wants to answer, so when you gonna have a baby, right? This question is like, it's like the universal trigger, right? You could be holding a plate of pumpkin pie and someone decides it's the perfect moment to ask you about your uterus and its upcoming plans. Like, not the right time, Aunt Karen.
Aunt Karen. Why, Aunt Karen, stop that. But let's break down why that stings a little bit. First off, it assumes that pregnancy is a choice. Secondly, it erases everything you're going through medically, emotionally, financially. And third, it turns the suffering into small talk.
Yeah, it makes it that assumption that it's a choice. And I've heard a lot of patients say this to me over the years. They'll come in, and you've heard this as well during these holidays. And this is how we know all of this to tell you, right? Because this is from years and years in the clinic and trying to be there to be that supportive ear to listen, that, you know, person to lean on during a time that a lot of people really don't grasp what the gravity of it is and why it stings, right? First of all, there's a few ways to respond. You can gauge this depending on your energy level. Thanksgiving, you might have more energy for this question than you do at New Year's after it's been like Aunt Karen for months now. And one way is a very strong boundary setting response. And that's one that's like, hey, thanks for thinking of us. We're actually focusing on our health this year. And that's just that. Just drop it, right? Like, or we have a lot going on. How are you doing? Right? Just a complete redirection. Like, yeah, we got a lot going on. How are you? How you been? And then there's the truth telling response, the one that says, you know what? We're actually walking through infertility and it's really hard to talk about. Thank you for asking. I appreciate the question. Right? Because I think it is important if you can, it's important to recognize that the pain isn't being inflicted intentionally, right? I think very few people who ask, when are you having a baby, would do so if they knew how hurtful it can be or is to those facing infertility. And so you can just say, I'd rather not discuss that. And that's okay too, right? Any one of those allows you to choose. Like, am I setting boundaries right now based on what energy I have? Am I going to redirect you? Am I just going to shut you down? Or do I feel safe? And do I feel like, you know what? I can say out loud to my Aunt Karen, that am going through fertility, right? So it's a lot based on you and what you're up for.
Absolutely. The truth telling response, hey, we're going through infertility. It's painful to talk about. I think that should be just a conversation ender right there. The other person needs to respect that. And again, we are here to tell. And Karen, you need to stop that and shut that down.
Yes.
We are going to be very clear on that. You do not owe anybody a single detail about your reproductive life.
That's right.
Privacy is is your secret. It's your protection. It's what you want to divulge to these people, and they need to respect that as well. But again, Aunt Karen, that's a no-no. We're not going to be talking about stuff like
We're not doing it. No. And I do also want to name that for many of our listeners, especially those who are LGBTQ plus, single parents by choice, or living in states that are hostile to reproductive care in general, when you ask that question, it comes with this like entire set of baggage that is all of the systemic barriers that face that person, right? So it's even worse when your Aunt Karen looks at, your cousin Sue and her wife, Mary, and says, "Oh, when are you guys gonna have a baby?" That's like even because think about it, like, I mean, they might want to just say, well, like you said, I like your answer. And you know what? I'm empowering all of you this year, all of you patient listeners or people for whom this hits home. I want you to say it after Anne Marie. And it's what? None ya business, right?
none you.
None ya business, right? The question's just nosy. And it's a reminder of, right? And also we gotta talk logistics of the nightmare that can be IVF, meds, and cycles during the holidays, right? Because IVF cycles, most places they continue. There's some usual like little down period around the holidays, but not some I think it's pretty less nowadays that clinics are down like the whole month of December. I think some do,
Mhm.
and that's just how they run their business. But for the most part, especially if you're a patient, IVF cycles don't pause for the holidays most of the time. Meds don't take a holiday break. Progesterone and oil doesn't magically disappear because it's Christmas Eve, right? You still have to, sneak off and, shoot yourself with a 1.5 inch needle with a milliliter full of oil in it. Like, what could be more fun, right? I remember this wasn't holiday time. It kind of was. It was July 4th, and we were in between houses. We closed on one house and we were waiting on the other to close, and so it was like 4 days, something like that. So we were staying at like a little resort. And in July in Arizona, resorts are dirt cheap because it's like so hot. But nonetheless, it worked for us, but I can remember the alarm going off 7 p.m. I had to hop out of the pool, go find a, spot, do that shot. So understanding that and also, like, for our patients who are teachers or have other roles where they can have some control around their schedule, a lot of time the holidays, they feel pressure to do it during that period of time because that's the only time their work gives them the break, right?
Mhm. Yeah. I also, in regards to medication, it's something to also think about, like refills, right? Pharmacies are going to
Yeah,
be closed. And on certain days, like Thanksgiving Day, are they open the day after Thanksgiving? Are they open Saturday after Thanksgiving? Christmas, Christmas Eve? All of these dates that what ifs, right? There's always the we have to prepare for the worst, right? And just in
right.
case, are you going to
Yep,
run out of Ganarelle? Are you going to have enough follistim if you're still going through cycles?
right.
And yes, going back to your thing, I think for some people who are not familiar with the clinic, but there are many clinics that shut down their embryology lab for a week or two at the end of the year. They do like their quality control, their maintenance, things like that. And I've had many patients come back. Why? Why can't we start? Why can't we start with this period? Well, I'm going to have to put you on birth control pills until the lab reopens and after the new year. But also, speaking of new year and timing of all of these types of things, insurance, right? A lot of people want to get their cycles in before the end of the year. So that's another thing. And if a lab is shut down, people get upset. And so it's managing that as well, like the expectations and making sure that we're informing our patients as well, like, hey, the next cycle is not going to start until January or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But medications, going back to medications, as you said, it's like, yeah, are we going to be able to get them to you? Vials break, they fall on the ground and they break. I once was taking Lupron for a study and I dropped my Lupron at a hotel. They had tile floor and my Lupron went
Glass
everywhere.
shattering. Yep.
Yeah, it was like,
Stuff happens.
it happens. These are things that, try to prepare for, but hopefully don't happen to you. But we just want to make sure that there's plans in place, making sure you know who to contact at your clinic, who to contact at the pharmacy in these critical times when you're doing that. But you have traveling, you're changing time zones, and sometimes, like going back to your progesterone and oil, how many times did you get the question of like, well, I'm on the East Coast and I take it at 7 p.m., but now I'm going to go to California and, and it's a whole thing of
Yep,
backwards or counting
yep,
forwards. We're doing all
yep.
these things, right? So that's a big question that people always ask,
It's
especially
a
when they're
huge
traveling.
question, and I would tell patients a lot of times, especially ones who would do, like, a two-part trigger, I would tell them, "Just set an alarm for 12 hours," because that way, no matter where you are or like a timer for 12 hours. But that way
Yeah.
you're not second guessing the time zones.
Hmm.
Because one of the fertility clinics that I supported for quite a long time, we worked across the entire United States. And so we always had like those time zone type stressors. But when you add those things that occur anyway, especially when you face the fact that a lot of patients in this country do have to travel for fertility care, they have to get on an airplane and go to a fertility clinic. Now, some people might say, well, that makes no sense, Elizabeth. They have a fertility clinic right down the street. Well, newsflash, there's more to access than physical location, right? If you don't have the financial assets, then you may have to get on a plane and fly somewhere that does, right?
Yes.
So, you've got, like you mentioned, travel disruptions. That's a whole nother ball of wax. And I've seen it happen, unfortunately, more times than I would have liked over the years where patients missed something really big, like a retrieval or a transfer because of travel plans.
Yep.
I can remember a patient once that her flights were canceled. This was always especially difficult around the holidays because the clinic that I worked for was based in upstate New York. So, as you can imagine, the winter became a little dicey for travel plans as well. So, it's just that the unpredictable schedules. Then there's like, oh, hey, Aunt Karen, can I refrigerate this medication in your house fridge? Like, what is that? And like, also, by the way, one of the things I
I like
always
your
felt
Aunt Karen's voice. Aunt Karen
so,
has a great voice.
She
Good
totally
job.
does, right? But,
She totally sounds like a Karen.
I love it. I was practicing. I'm glad you like it. And I mean, I think also you have to address that for people on stimulation meds. Um, most REIs will tell you not to drink alcohol in those medications. Why do we know that there's a problem? No. The problem is we don't know there's not a problem. And when the stakes are as high as they are in a treatment that's so much out of pocket, most patients will just try to abstain from alcohol while they're doing any form of treatment. So, like, everyone else is cheersing to their champagne, and you're like, "Oh, are my follicles big enough yet? Like, where's the guest room? I need to like sneak that fridge out of my Aunt Karen's fridge and go, or that med out of my Aunt Karen's fridge, and then like go sneak in the bathroom and then go sneak it back in the fridge." Like, there's a lot of logistics. And then you've got like the emotional toll of it all. Like, honestly, sobbing through the Hallmark movies because hormones are doing what hormones do. Like, I'll never forget crying at a kitty litter commercial when I was on Medicare. And I'm like, this is how it is. It's a kitty litter commercial,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
right?
totally I
Right? But give us some like of your trusted strategies on how to get through some of those logistical type things when you are doing IVF over a holiday.
definitely one of the things that I would recommend is, get the planning ahead with your clinic, right? You want to plan ahead. That's one of the keys is know about your morning monitoring. Like where are you going to do your monitoring at if you're out of town? If you're in a new place, like can you do it out of town monitoring and which clinic do they recommend? How to reach the on-call nurse after hours for any type of little emergencies. That's important that you have that communication and you have that rapport with the clinic so that you're able to know exactly what to do and know whether the labs are open, right? We all need
Mhm.
to know all of that. So another thing that I always tell people to do is like, well, how much medication should I bring with me? I'm only gonna be gone for 2 days. Okay, well, I would say make sure you take more than 2 days worth of medications
Mhm.
for sure. So definitely want to overpack your meds, bring extras, bring backup needles. Again, I dropped my Lupron on the floor. You want to make sure you have extra needles, extra syringes, because something may happen and it always happens in the weirdest times, right? So just be prepared, overpack, be a good Girl Scout, and be prepared bringing a cooler so that your meds can be kept cool, particularly if you're flying on a flight. And I always, recommend to people like, do you need a note to fly? No, not really. Usually, TSA is fine with you going through with your needles and syringes, the medication. They see it all the time. Medications with syringes and needles going through. It's as long as they're. I tell my patients make sure that your needles and syringes are packaged. Like they're not outside of the package. They're still nicely packaged up then you're usually fine. I went through an airport security with a whole bunch of needles and syringes when I was doing med teaches, and I had to
Yeah.
do a med teach when I was out of town, and I brought them all through. I brought medications through, no problem. They didn't even ask, and I was all ready to go. Hey, I'm a nurse, and I'm doing this, and blah blah blah. And they didn't even
You had
care.
your
They were
whole
just like,
speech plans. They were like,
I
"We
was
don't
all
care."
ready. I was like, "Yeah, let me talk and tell them what I'm
Did not
doing." And
care.
I was all excited about sharing my fertility life with people, and they had none of it. They were just
They were
like,
like,
"Okay, yeah, keep
"Next,
going. Get out. Yeah, get out. Just take your shoes and
lady,
go,
can you
please."
move your stuff?"
Exactly. Exactly. So, the other thing I always tell patients when, it's this time of year and traveling, all that is give yourself some grace. If you need to skip an event, if you need to avoid any type of triggering situations, do it. Skip it. It's okay. Your mental health comes first. And, you're not going to have FOMO. Don't have FOMO. You need
No.
to take care of yourself during these times.
Yeah, and it is. That's not the easiest thing to do, especially around holidays, big events, things with a lot of pressure. But at the
Hmm.
end of the day, it's not worth it, especially when you are doing a cycle. So, I think we did a really good job at helping to paint the picture. And this is the last thing I'll say about this before we transition to our next topic. But I used to tell my patients, and this wasn't just at the holidays, but I would tell them this any time of year. I would tell my patients' partner, specifically their partner. I usually don't even know if I would tell the patient this, but I would try, if there was a chance, whether they were together or not, to say to them, "Hey, I just want you to know your partner is not going to be your partner for a little while because the meds that she's injecting or he's injecting are they're brutal. It's a lot to them. This is a lot of pressure, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot. So they are not going to be the person that you're used to for, you know, most of time. So give them grace, right? Like I think we got to tell patients to give themselves grace, but we also have to like remind um our partners to give the grace because it's not you're not yourself. I mean, if you think about put this into perspective, an average IVF cycle of, let's say, a 30-year-old woman, and I'm just pulling numbers out of memory. So if anybody wants to call me on the research, feel free to. But I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of if you're around 30 years old and you're doing an IVF cycle, we might be able to collect up to 20 eggs. That's possible. That's plausible, right? 20 eggs, that's 20 times the amount of hormones you have surging through your body. So you know how you're if you have a female partner around ovulation and menstruation, she can be a little moody. Okay. So now let's extrapolate that to we have 20 periods worth of ovulation right now. We have 20 periods worth of get the bleep out of my way. Right. So, like, really honing this idea that, like, they're not going to be themselves and that's okay. And the way that you can support them is just to support them. Right. Don't need to call it anything. Just say, it's okay. I got you. This sucks. You're right. And I got you. So, some of those things I learned at least in terms of how to help patients during these times from my work in miscarriage, like infant loss mainly, or late term, second term, mid second term, and late third term miscarriage and infant loss during the holidays, right? This is like the really heavy part because many people do associate miscarriage or infant loss with the specific holiday that's closest to when it occurred. And it's that type of grief is extremely sharp and it is extremely disorienting. And folks need to understand if there's somebody in your life that you're going to be around during the holidays that has recently undergone or ever really undergone, I mean, like you mentioned, your Januaries, right? Not necessarily all of
Mhm.
them, but it still hits you. It's different for everybody, and people should have the room to do it how they need to. But again, many people this these next coming 6 weeks holidays will that you will encounter at a holiday party or a holiday event, they will be navigating that sharp and disorienting grief. And so
Yeah.
now perhaps you can understand, those of you listening, why a question like, when are you going to have a baby during the holidays is so tragically mistimed and all of the other things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that, there's that pressure to pretend that you're okay, everything's fine, everything's good, because they don't wanna share specific news. They don't wanna share their infertility, they don't wanna share their loss, right? So they just pretend everything's okay, but there is research that shows that suppressing that grief just worsens the emotional outcome.
Yeah.
So it's something to be, very aware of,
Yep.
and, you know, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I found to be a, a very powerful tool in walking families through infant loss around the holidays. And it was always about naming the loss, right? Your baby's name. What is your baby's name? Let's say your baby's name, right? Creating small rituals that can allow you to have and try to cherish whatever memories you do have, right? Because they're very different depending on the type of loss, right? So whether you light a candle, we used to hold a candle lighting ceremony every October on National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. It's in the middle of October. And there's it still happens, but there's a candle lighting ceremony where all the patients who have gone through that type of that loss, which in the hospital setting is sometimes called the Resolve Through Sharing program, but they hold that ceremony for all people who've been affected by that, whether the last week or 20 years ago, but that they have that space to have and hold the memory, right? Or like you said, stepping away from gatherings, setting aside intentional time to honor the child that you lost. That's super important. It's super important. And I think it is why the holidays are so hard.
They are. It's you have sure it's a medical thing that we're going through, but it's emotional trauma. Um, we need to have compassionate care, we need to have mental health support. And again, this is for people who have partners. It goes for the partner as well, because partners suffer as well. They're just like, I'm going to support my partner, but you know what, they're grieving as well. So it's something that also needs to be pointed out,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
I'm
just
glad you said that too, because yeah, I would see that a lot where the partner was more left out of the grieving conversation. Um, and we talked a bit about this when we talked about men's health last week, but knowing that, like you said, the partner still feels it all, they're actually, one could argue it's even harder because they're trying to hold it all together to be the support for their birthing partner, whichever one is enduring the medical trauma part of it all. They're trying to hold that part up. And also, I think that, you know, some gender norms, right? Like some cisgendered many are very driven by fixing a problem, right? And I don't make gender stereotypes like loosely. I'm just, there's this like male need to fix things. And so if the partner suffering involves the male, right? Like knowing that they're gonna feel lost and they're gonna feel like they just want to do anything that they can to fix it, right? And so if you're listening to this and this is hitting a nerve, if you have experienced infant loss, pregnancy loss, you're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to say no at the holidays. Like, you are allowed to disengage from traditions that feel unbearable right now. Just because you don't go to your family's white elephant ceremony this year doesn't mean you'll never go again. It just means that this year you're going to do the best you have or the best you can with what you have. And that's all that we can ever expect of ourselves. And so you are allowed to say no. You are allowed to step aside and disengage if you need to protect your peace. And it's hard, especially at the holidays, like I said, because it's all a lot of disappointment, but you're going through way more than most people right now, and so that's where that grace to just say, "Yep, I'm unplugging from this one."
yeah, nobody wants Aunt Karen's waffle maker anyway in the white elephant. So, you know,
Exactly. You missed out on absolutely nothing, but you left with your sanity.
yeah, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about survival strategies, which we kind of already are hitting on. Like you said, deciding ahead of time which gatherings that you can handle and which ones you're not. And, not all invitations are obligations. You do not have to go. We talked about, if you're not up for it, then don't go. And you know what? Even if you RSVP'd yes, you can still not go. That is, if you're just not up for it that night or that day or whatever the event is going to be, just don't go. It's okay. You're not obligated to go to anything, even if you RSVP'd yes. So I think, having a support person, obviously, a partner, spouse, sibling, friend who can kind of run interference as well.
That's
Like
good.
if if someone's going to be like at a gathering or what have you, they start talking about you and you're not there, obviously, but if they start talking about you, as long as you have somebody there that's be like, you know what, divert, change the
Right,
subject, change the topic. They don't need, again, none your business, right?
right. And if you know you have a family member that just runs their mouth, like, you can absolutely tell your cousin Jackie, like, "Hey, can you keep an eye on Uncle Frank because he gets a little tipsy after 9 and he's gonna start asking us when we're having kids, right? And you can just, play interference on that. That's okay too. Like avoiding it before it happens, if you can do it, do it.
Yeah. We talked about having pre-planned scripts, like basically what you're gonna say. Plan kind of what you and your partner, or if you're single, just yourself, just have a plan. Have a plan of what you're gonna say. How do you want to approach it? Or you know what? You can approach
Or not.
different people in different ways. Yeah, or not. And you can, for one person, you can be like, "Oh, I'm great," or, "I'm fine, thank you, bye." And then you can talk to somebody else and say something different. It's all okay. Or you can just disengage, and that's okay too. It's all okay. One of the things that I think is very helpful is definitely having a plan to exit it when needed. You may not have to
Yeah,
leave a gas station, but maybe taking a walk around the block or just outside, sometimes you just need a moment outside away from everything to refocus. And if that entails going in the backyard, front yard, taking a walk, whatever, it's okay. Do it. I do that all the time. Like
I
sometimes I'm
know.
just like,
I was
man,
gonna say
I need a nap, So
absolutely. Give yourself the space to say, like, I just need a reset and or I just need to feel these feelings.
yeah,
Right? Sometimes
exactly.
you just need to sneak off to the bathroom, have yourself a little
Mhm.
cry break. At least this is me. I just need to get the tears out and move on. Like our little cartoon episode this week said, right? You need to cry. Crying releases negative emotion, right? So,
Yes.
and I think you can also create sort of like fertility safe holiday rituals as well, especially if you are in that category of folks for whom this is like a really impactful issue around the holidays. So, instead of holiday cards with kids, right? Maybe do cards celebrating your year as a couple or if your year as an individual, right? Like I've seen people do hilarious photo, like spoof photo almost of like just you can have so much fun with it, honestly.
Mhm.
And so, and remembering too, like you can plan a getaway instead of a big family gathering. There's been years where life has just been a lot and it's our family has just said, you know what, we just want it to be our immediate family today. And that's just that, like, and that's okay. And, you can do like a chosen meal with people who really understand. So perhaps you put your guardrails or your boundaries up for Aunt Karen, but you also have a space and an outlet for people who do understand. And then honestly, this might be one of my favorite things. And I will say that from personal experience, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that volunteering reduces grief intensity. Research shows that volunteering your time reduces grief intensity. And having had lost a very close friend this time around almost exactly this time last year, and wondering how I would ever make it through the other side, helping other people was always the thing that filled my cup up just enough to make it across the next milestone, if you will. And so if you are grieving, either not being able to be a parent, losing a baby, anything, even knowing you need infertility treatment, but you can't afford it. If there's any grief in your life surrounding these things, if you can find a place to volunteer your time, it will bring some sunlight. It won't solve it all. It won't make the pain go away at all, or entirely, but there's something about serving other people that has a really, 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 really powerful effect on grief.
I really like that. Really hadn't thought about that. The only time I've ever really volunteered, I mean, I've done volunteering through the years, but like speaking in my younger years, meaning young adult years in the 20s and things like that, the only time I ever really did volunteering work was if it was required. And as I got older, I felt like, oh, I should do some volunteering. And I felt, you're right, it makes you feel better. And I just do it because I do it. I don't want to like get anything out of it. I don't need to do it for like mandatory hours or anything like that for like school and like that. But I
No,
think
just the
you're
mere
right.
the mere opportunity to focus on helping somebody else. Because, like, I know part of what grief makes grief feel like the heavy thing that it is that it can feel mistimed to have joy in times of grief,
Uh
if
huh.
that makes sense. So you can think some people who are experiencing grief, if they do feel a fleeting moment of joy or happiness, they sometimes can come to regret that or feel like they should regret that. And when you're helping somebody else, when you're watching that energy light somebody else up, I think it's the exact positive spin your brain needs in that dark moment to sort of see the light again, see the light, right?
I love that. That's one of my favorite things now. That's such a great, suggestion.
No,
Definitely.
truly, it brought me out of the darkness because I did. I felt very guilty about having any moments of happiness until I realized, A, that that's what she would have wanted, but that it really I mean, it really does something for your soul to just like you said, selflessly, I'm not trying to get check boxes on not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
volunteering for that reason either,
Right. Good.
but yeah, it was, definitely I would recommend to anybody experiencing heavy grief, depression, any type of just heavy emotional stuff, find somewhere to give even an hour of your time a week, and it can even be something as kind of basic as, like, writing postcards for, like, the ASPCA or something like that. Like, there's all kinds of organizations that will mail you a stack of postcards, and they just ask you to fill them out, and it's surprising what even doing that on your own can do for your mind. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so
because I think a lot of people think of volunteering as like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the soup kitchen," but it doesn't have to be that.
it's
There's so
so,
many
so, so
volunteer
many.
opportunities, and every, like, major city, that I've lived in, they have, like, you can just Google search volunteer pla and they'll have, like,
Yes,
lists of, like, where you can volunteer and all of that, so, it's not like, "Oh, I gotta find" no, just Google it for your area. I'm in the Orlando area, so I would look Orlando and you can
yeah,
find a place. But
exactly.
also just, you know, you don't have to pretend that you're fine either. You don't have to pretend you're good. You can be both. You can be joyful, you can be grieving, you can be hopeful, you can be exhausted, angry, grateful. We can have more than one feeling at a time and that's okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you for saying that because we do tend to feel it's either or, and you can absolutely feel, those 2 feelings at once. So, if you're walking through infertility or loss this holiday season, we do want you to know that we see you, we're supporting you, your grief is real, and we made this episode for you, but also for your family members so that you can send it to them right now and make
Mhm.
sure just say, "Hey, listen to this before I show up next Thursday, if you don't mind. Thank you so much."
Yeah.
Because you are supported. We see you, we get it, and we want to provide that space.
Yes, exactly. Because Aunt Elizabeth and Aunt Anne-Marie, we're gonna take down Aunt Karen's around the world. Um,
I
but,
know we're going to have a lot of hate mail from a lot of
yeah,
Karens around the world. Let's actually just throw in a
listen,
disclaimer because we do not want to be sued. We have talked about not wanting to be sued by you too, by a lot of different people now over our dozen or so or more episodes. But please, all the Karens of the world, actually, we know that I've met a million amazing Karens. And
yes,
so it's the unfortunate sort of like little joke, but we love you too, Aunt Karen.
absolutely. Just stop asking when you're gonna have a baby. That's all we
That's
ask.
all.
That's it.
That's it. So, yes. So,
But also in closing, you deserve gentleness, you deserve boundaries, you deserve a holiday season that doesn't ignore your pain.
exactly, exactly, exactly. So, if you found this episode helpful, do share it with someone that might need it. Subscribe for more conversations that honor the messy, beautiful reality that is infertility and all that comes along with it.
Yeah. So we'll see you next time on the Repo Files.
See you next time.